Paladins was a very fun but ultimately flawed game, which after straggling along through subpar management for 7 years has finally come to the end of its life cycle, never achieving the potential I believe it had. I don't think the game itself is to blame for its support being cut off, since it was and is a fun game at its core. However, as I stated before, the management has to catch most of the flack for the sad state of Paladins. Now, to be fair, they were presented with a very difficult situation, having to manage the competition from Overwatch, a Blizzard game. Now, that don't mean as much as it did, but back then it did, okay? All that with a relatively small team, and they did keep it going for 7 years if you exclude the time it was in open beta for, and 9 years if you include the open beta. But the choice to monetize the game with every microtransaction under the sun sure was a choice they made. And oh boy, what a choice it was. Alright, let's first begin with the part where I tell you what Paladins is. Paladins is a video game, which is a term that refers to an electronic game that consists of interactions with it through a user interface or input device in order to generate visual feedback from a display device. The earliest record of a video game, although highly debated, is cathode ray tube amusement device in 1947. The first commercially successful is Pong in 1972, however, and in the 90s you got bullied for playing Daggerfall. Now you see, Dragon Age 2 isn't really that bad of a game, it's just a severe downgrade to Origins, therefore leading to the massive blowout of hate it has. The preservation of the abilities learned in Jedi Fallen Order over to Survivor is quite ingenious game design, since you tread new ground instead of retracing old one, and most importantly, it's cohesive with the story and Cal's journey because he grows to become a knight. But that doesn't mean I don't have my gripes with both stories, which... Alright, that concludes our lecture. Any questions? Yes, Timmy?
Microtransactions are good for the player.
You son of a b... Oh, Paladins, right. Hero shooter, first person, 5v5, open queue, 4 roles, frontline, damage, flank, support. Now all shenanigans aside, it's time I got to it. The core gameplay is built around a perk and card system that changes how you play the champion with an in-match purchase traits mechanic that you gain points by doing stuff. Basically playing the game, standing on point, doing damage, healing, etc., which affects your champion's stats. A quarter amount of disclosure here, I have never played comp in this game, I haven't really fiddled much with different builds in this game, so my time with the game probably won't be fully indicative of what the gameplay is capable of. But I can tell you with absolute certainty that this game is far more casual than Overwatch, and I'd say a bit more casual than more Rivals, because you can literally lower the ability cooldowns as well as boost your ult charge rate through the in-match trade purchase system I mentioned earlier in this game. That takes away from the precise decision making typically involved in a more competitive game where the misuse of a cooldown can spell death, say Overwatch as an example, which is in the same genre, and you mess up your sleep dart on Anna, well, you're dead.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
But I also mentioned Overwatch because the one thing that's always haunted Paladins is being deemed an Overwatch clone. There's evidence that this isn't the case, and there's examples that could be seen as evidence of Paladins taking hero design ideas from Overwatch. But you can also point to Overwatch supposedly stealing from Paladins. Either way, I'm not here to talk about that. True or untrue, it's not good to be considered a lesser version of something else, and that's yet another thing that held it back from achieving the recognition I believe it deserved. Now, Marvel Rivals managed to subvert this with no doubt the help of a bigger budget, since Smite might have made high-res millions, but mobile games make billions. Can you guess what company made Marvel Rivals? Yeah, the higher budget contributed to a more polished and more graphically smooth game, but there's also the perspective format being third person that distinguishes it from Overwatch at a first glance. So Paladins being first person and not as graphically smooth as Overwatch, even though the Paladins art style is absolutely beautiful, marked it as an Overwatch clone. It's kind of a psychological phenomena human beings have because of things like the halo effect and other brain gobbledygook stuff that influence your perception of things that look better than other similar things to be the original, even if it's not the case. I bet you didn't expect that one. Deep stuff. Yeah. So I mentioned the art style, and it lends well to character designs because, oh my god, some designs are fire, but there's also some designs that are not good. I'm going to be talking about the character designs in terms of appearance and not gameplay loop to an extent, and it's the hero designs which are housed within Paladins that give such a strong backbone to my idea of the game never achieving the potential it had because as with any hero shooter, the heroes are the selling point, the most important aspect of it. And if the heroes in a hero shooter don't catch your eye, then we've seen hero shooters fail. Fail horribly. But Paladins has good designs in spades. So in recent light of actually certified people making videos on character designs in games, I thought to let you know of my qualifications. I have played games before, a decent amount of them, so I'm not qualified to give you a factual opinion on either design or loop. Now, it's a given that out of 59 champions, not all of them are going to be bangers. That given, my subjective opinion demands I tell you about Yagoroth and just look at her. Yes, it's a she. She's this big, all-devouring worm, and she's a tank. It just fits so well because her hide looks tough as hell and looks like it could take a real beating like a tank should, for one. For two, her fangs and spikes look damn sharp. And all this while looking like the queen she is. I attribute it to the crown-like headpiece because of how dominating and imposing it seems. It has these horns that contribute to that look of eliteness she has. I initially thought she was a brood mother of sorts because of that fierce appearance she has, and she kind of is, but she's also the maw that will consume all. So all in all, pretty cool lore. And she does have this special camera angle when you play her. I'm not talking about her gameplay loop, even though I find it pretty fun how she's this stationary mobile flank tank. I'm talking about how our perspective is through her mouth. She's the biggest tank in the game, and honestly I think it would have been very hard to have the perspective through her eyes because of her design and height. But it makes sense for a character to have it this way, because she's the devourer and she does that through her mouth. Simple, but effective. You know, I want to shout out the guy who informed me of her, but for the life of me, I can't remember. This was a video character design in games, I'm pretty sure, but it escapes me. Nevertheless, back to the topic at hand. Yogg's design is on par with the great designs of the frontline category, barring an exception. Nyx. I can't really say it's bad. I'm a straight man of flesh and blood.
Oh, mama!
But it's just doesn't click for me. Her lore is supposed to be Lilith-esque of rebellion against the heavens and wanting freedom, and her design makes sense for that lore, but we have a skin in the game of her past as a Pyre Lord, and she still has this overtly sensual look to her. So the change from her rebellion is shown as her being more demonic now, which is fine, but the Pyre is kind of supposed to be heaven and holy stuff, right? And Furia is a very good example of this. I know her outfit used to be more revealing, but stay with me here. She is a beautiful woman, and she's dressed how an angel would, but is still feminine and has the character of a warrior. Just a good design all around. Now from what I could find, Nyx's Divine Monarch skin is a release day skin, and I doubt you have the budget to severely change the character model on release, so it wouldn't have been an option to satiate my massive insecure ego of how a character should look. As I said, great tank designs all around. Without going in depth, some examples. Rom, Terminus, Inara, Makoa, and practically the whole category. So you know, thinking back on Yogg, she was weakened by a fierce goddess before getting her face kicked in by a Zon. But no, it's a goddamn anime cat girl. She's supposed to be a goddess praised upon by people, you know? She doesn't look like she's divine in nature unless your girlfriend is a pillow, And yes, I can tell she's got connections to the moon because of her color scheme and a little blue mark on her face, so it conveys that aspect clearly. But all I can think about is how her followers are a complete weeaboos. Is it wrong to be a weeaboo? Well, as long as you ain't hurting other people, you can have all the girlfriend pills you like. It's all dandy, it literally doesn't matter. What matters to me is that her design, at least to me, is mid. Probably better than 90% of other designs like it on the market, but in Paladins, it comes off as uninspired and just plain generic anime, which usually doesn't bother me, but I have a bias towards not liking this kind of character design. It is not like I have a problem with the furry-like elements. I can't explain it. Although I do find Ray's design to be a bit better, maybe since hers doesn't really have much expectations placed on her from her lore because she's just a bubbly scholar for a couple of authoritarian house-ruling lovers. I haven't played either, so I'm purely talking on a design standpoint because they could be fun as hell. They seem alright in the training range. Like Pip and Tiberius are cool designs, and Tiberius is a French Tony the Tiger looking Uranus. Still pretty good though, like he's a master of all weapons and he looks smooth. Now, the tank, damage, and flank characters have the better designs for their default variants, while supports don't. It's not because the characters in the support class are designed worse, it's just that it has more of what I would say duds. There's 13 champions in the class, so for every 6.5 champions like Grover and Maldamba and insert hero that isn't either of the two previously mentioned as not on par with the rest of the cast, there's an Io or Ray. There of course will be stuff to nitpick as with all classes, but just as the other classes, they have beautiful skins. All for a visit down at the store tab and the buy crystal subsection to directly purchase a skin you want or purchase a loot box to have a chance at the skin you want, or buy the battle pass to earn a chance of getting the skin or cosmetic you want. Which now segues me to the next part. I've worked Paladin's shaft long enough. It's time I started railing on the terrible decisions that sure didn't help the game. First is the over-monetization of the game. Now the things I mentioned can be accepted since it's a free-to-play game, but that doesn't mean that loot boxes will ever not be evil. Because you are paying or grinding for a chance to get the item you want. Well, let me tell you, in Paladins, there's plenty of things you could want. Announcers, titles, loading screen frames, mounts, death stamps, death cards, and etc., which you can buy with in-game currency or yet again have a chance at getting some of them through loot boxes. But you know, cosmetic stuff, not anything gameplay related that would give an unfair advantage to a paying player. Well, an example, a Season 4 Champions bundle comes with Yagurath, Octavia, Vatu, Ray, Sati, Azan, and all their talents, which to unlock all talents for a champion, you need to be at level 8 with that champion. Like, this isn't much of a big deal. You'll have all of them on a few games with a champion, and it's not that game breaking since even if the base talent is the worst, you could theoretically still have a good build, all because of the very integral to the core gameplay loop of the card system, literally filled with it in mind. Oh, it's certainly changed a lot since its debut. It's still a staple of Paladins. Yeah, imagine if it was monetized so that to level them up instead of as it is today where you got 5 card slots and 15 points max, so you got to be a bit calculated on what card to put at what level because not all of them can be level 5. You would have to purchase them, of course, with in-game currency and not real-world money, but that can be bought with real money just so that players can skip out on the grind. And just imagine if you had to purchase a loot box for the chance of leveling up the card you want. So, you would go through dozens of cards before fully leveling up the card you want, but that would never happen. Oh. Full disclosure, I wasn't playing during this time for the game, but I've got strong reason to believe that it hurt the game because of the sharp number decrease at the time, which may be a case of correlation instead of a causation. But then again, player and general public sentiment seems to agree that Cards Unbound was awful. Although that might just be a case of the loud minority, I strongly disagree with that because of what the update was. And what it was is a pay-to-win Battlefront 2 wannabe. Enlisting quick play, because the cards were limited at level 4 in competitive, while most of the player base is casual. So it's the casuals who are most affected by the pay-to-win mechanics. For the uninitiated, Cards Unbound or OB64 released on the 17th of December 2017. In this update, the card loadout system was changed so that you had all the cards unlocked by level 1, which before the patch wasn't the case. You had to unlock them. It was a whole different system, closer to what it is today, which I again wasn't really playing the game or fiddling with it, but it doesn't matter. The point of the matter is that it was radically seems to be a fitting word, a radically different system before Cards Unbound changed it to the mess it was. And what a mess. Now, new players will of course be at a disadvantage when playing against more veteran ones, but with this update, if a veteran player goes against a first time player or one who rarely plays the game who are playing the same champion, they will decimate them with a maxed out build, because the veteran player would be, say, doing 30 to 50% more damage on the same ability. So at that point, it's just a gacha game due to the cards being earned through loot boxes, which you could get for free by grinding. For example, you got a champion specific loot box for every mastery level, but that grind doesn't guarantee you'll get the cards you want, or one that you'll actually use, because it's RNG based progression system, since it's a goddamn loot box. The dev team themselves said that they didn't like the decision because I believe they knew it's an inherently anti-fun design. But it was clearly a managerial decision, and an awful one at that. From the month of November to that of December, which it's the month the update came live, there was a sharp decline. It's of course normal to lose players as time passes, but this kind of design alienates players because of the wall to fun it puts, and either you pay up or grind up. So it rules out a big majority of people who are casuals and don't have much time to play, so they would like the game to be fun and not a grind, or it required to bust the bank. Now there really isn't a way to concretely prove this, because for one, Overwatch 1 wasn't on Steam and it never released the player stats besides the total amount of downloads, but we can guess that people interested in hero shooter gameplay would go to the next thing that would satisfy that want. And what was the only actual competition Paladins had at the time? It wasn't Battleborn, I tell you that much. It was Overwatch, and those players that left Paladins, even if 1% of them went to Overwatch, it's customers going to the competition. Cards Unbound and its features are long gone. The game never fully recovered from the damages to its reputation, and now is just another entry on Paladin's history of mismanagement. And there's one more topic on monetization I would like to discuss: the fact that most champions are locked. What's the main draw to a hero shooter? Isn't it the heroes? Well, you'd be right. So having to grind for them or buying in-game currency to get them doesn't sound like fun. And it was a pretty big problem for free-to-play hero shooters, emphasis on was, because even though it took Overwatch a while, the heroes are no longer locked behind the battle pass and everybody has access to them now. Marvel Rivals came out with all heroes available for everybody, and they've been releasing new ones for everyone without any grinding or paying. Apex is still in keeping with the old pagan anti-Christ traditions of hero shooters. But alas, Paladin support has been cut off, and though it would have been a nice gesture to have all the champions available for free to everyone, might as well have a chance that someone might spend some money to unlock them. Now, although Paladin's tale is a sad one, the game still had a decent run with a solid player base throughout its lifespan, but as I've hopefully conveyed, it never achieved the potential I believe it had.